was really neat. Thank you, Jacqueline. I enjoyed listening to that. So I thought I would take this opportunity to talk about something that we internally, when we had the whole company together in December, talked through. It's a presentation that I gave, and I've expanded on it a little since then. The topic is education in the desert, and it's about a thesis I have that classrooms are classist, and that classrooms are not just a way of learning, which is obviously how we all experience them through high school and K through 8 education and through college, but actually on top of the classroom sits some of society's largest challenges and a lot of what we do to improve education, in as much as it happens inside a traditional in-person classroom, are actually, you're never going to get very far. There's super big limits on that. And I wanted to talk about that. And our company, our school, based in New York, and we have a team here in DC as well and around the country, we kind of exist to bust the classroom. So I wanted to talk through that as well. Basically, the classroom, you know, very familiar, don't have to spend a ton of time. For students, it's lecturer in the front, sleeping in the back. Student-teacher ratio of about 20-1 if you're lucky. A lot of times it's far worse than that. There's one learning style. There's one learning speed. For teachers, it's generally low pay. There's a lot of burnout. And when you get into higher education, there's a lot of disconnect from industry. So colleges are notoriously graduating people at low job placement rates. They don't report those kinds of numbers, even though obviously they should. And a lot of it is because the teachers are teaching academic skills. They're not really tied to industry. Classrooms then create the need for campuses. This argument is incredibly important. The dollars go to the bricks, not to the tuition, not to the students. Those tuition dollars get funneled into classrooms, which get funneled into buildings, which get funneled into campuses. NYU, where I live, NYU is built a $6 billion campus. Just to grow their campus, they spent $6 billion. That's the infrastructure, right? New York's an expensive place to build real estate, to build on. General Assembly, one of the competitors to us, and they have a location here in DC as well, they spend $3 million on a campus. Now that's not a lot relative to $6 billion, but that's still a lot of money that's not going to students, it's going to real estate. Tons of money goes to things that just aren't education, and that becomes the norm across higher ed. Texas A&M in December. This is a photograph of the new head coach of Texas A&M's football team arriving via private plane to the marching band, singing their song in a red carpet. It's just not education. That's just money that's being spent on something else. Now, those things aren't bad. Whatever, I'm not a big football fan, but people can be football fans. It's fine. But it's just not educational. Let's not pretend that it is. And on top of, clicker. Oh no. There we go. On top of a campus, on top of that super expensive piece of real estate, comes the neighborhood. So where do you build an extremely expensive campus if you want to attract really bright students that are the future? You build them in places where those bright and people that can afford the tuition live. So it tends to build in neighborhoods that are already wealthy, where rents are already high. NYU's $6 billion would have gone a lot further away, would have gone a lot further in Scottsdale, Arizona, but you wouldn't have reached the same type of student because those students don't live in Scottsdale, Arizona. The people that can pay tuition live in New York, live in California. So that's also what's happening in a lot of our industry in adult education for people going into new careers. Even if those kinds of schools think about job outcome as being core, when you tie to a classroom, when you think about a classroom in a campus in a neighborhood, you still put yourself in the place where the fancy and the rich people live. And that, generally speaking, is already where the rich people live. And little by little, those advantages trend toward those people just a little bit more. There's nothing wrong with it. You can always commute in from far away, but it's very hard to do. And so advantages skew just a little bit more toward wherever people already have money. And the classroom just enforces that. Neighborhoods in this country reflect the racial bias built into this country. That's all built on the same foundation. And in as much as you put a classroom where the wealthy people are, and you put a campus where the classrooms need to be, and your campuses have to attract students that can pay that tuition, you're reinforcing the same neighborhood definitions that come along for the ride. And you're just not fighting the problem at the same level. You can fight all the access problems you want in education, but as long as you're building inside a classroom, you can't crack it nearly the degree you'd want. And so these advantages just keep happening. It's actually a really good example. I'm going to go back to that slide. In Atlanta, where we also have a great team, the streets change names because of the segregation, the history of segregation in the Atlanta area. They changed names because real estate property values would go down in that time if you knew that the people on your block were not of the same race or gender, not gender, or not of the same race or religious background. And that's, I mean, it's an insane part of the American history that still keeps happening today and still exists today. Those street names are still the way they are today, and those things are just hard to change. And it's that same idea. Wealth accumulates where opportunity exists, and opportunity follows where wealth can pay for it. And education built in a classroom follows that same idea. It's the exact same thing over and over. And then when you look at education as how education is delivered and who it can tailor to, a classroom that's one size fits all excludes by design not just people that can geographically not reach you, but also people that learn in a different way, people that are disabled versus not disabled. It doesn't tailor to someone who needs a different way to access the material, visually impaired, or someone who can't get through a classroom door, or someone who just finds it that much 10%, 30% harder to reach that room. It's all one size fits all. And those edge cases accumulate. Those edge cases accumulate a great, great deal. Classrooms just aren't for that learner. And when you look globally, and this talk started when I saw the president of Beijing Normal University give a speech on how they're thinking about K through college education in China. When you look globally, the competition is incredibly fierce. US maintains its advantage internationally and around the world because we are innovative in pushing the envelope on what the future should look like, not because we are wedded to the institutions that got us here. In as much as we can shed those institutions, we will make greater progress. China is definitely investing in classrooms more than they're investing in alternative forms of education delivery. China will add as many people to the middle class as America has people. That's just an incredibly impressive stat in terms of scale. So, a lot of slides with a lot of black background, dark. Doesn't have to be this way. Our theory is, our hypothesis as existing as a company is that a great education is great because of the people, not because of the campuses. Campuses were necessary to bring people together. That was really important. That's what entrepreneurs like me call a seam. A seam is the weak spot where a large old system is most likely to become undone as you enable something else. And the core thing that we can undo without a campus is how to bring great people together without the grass, without the real estate, without the classroom, and then see what else we can undo and what else we can create as a result. Basically, that's the internet. Our theory is that networked computing, computers that connect to a network, allowed for something like remote work, the same way that networked education, this idea that we're creating, allows for education to be everywhere. And again, you don't have to have a physical classroom. Networked education means, let's just go through that concept a little bit. It relies on a few key things to be true. Number one, the best teachers are everywhere, not in Hayes Valley or Tribeca or inside the DMV. Great teachers can be everywhere. Number two, great teachers can be part-time. They can be doing something else in industry. They can be learning the most up-to-date skills in their day job, doing something on the side. And the best teachers are the best, not because they happen to be assigned to your classroom in your district, in your school zone with your superintendent or your principal, but they're the best teacher for that student at that time in that student's development. So the matching of the best student to the best teacher becomes possible with the matching itself, not with the identity of the person. So that's on the teacher side. Networked education for learners, what does it mean? It assumes, or it asserts that the same things are probably true on the similar things are true on the learner side. The best learners are everywhere. The best talent, like I grew up with all the advantages, right? I grew up in New York with parents that were very stable, able to support a very high-priced education in New York, and lo and behold, I'm the guy on this stage. Like there's a correlation between those things. I have a lot of lucky breaks, what Warren Buffett calls I won the ovarian lottery. But I don't think like I just happened into that. I think a lot of that was the fact that I was born into that place. But the best learners really are everywhere. Talent is everywhere. Employers should recognize, or are recognizing, that the best new hires already have jobs. If you're looking for talent only when you don't have a job, you're doing it wrong on the talent side, and you're probably not getting the best talent if that's who you're filtering to on the employer side. So what you need if people are going to grow in their careers, a way to keep learning without having to quit their job first, because that's extremely risky and removes the opportunity for a lot of people. And it goes to that third point. Most people are just super busy. There's a lot of pressure on your time as you go from just graduated school or just finished high school, where you might have more freedom, even if you don't have a lot of freedom, and you go into a part of your life where you have a mortgage or you have kids or you have a wife or you want to have those things. Those things create a lot of busyness and distraction. It's very, very hard to adapt your life and to keep pushing yourself when you're faced with that on a day-to-day basis. And so when I think about the future of education, and when I think about the opportunity we're trying to create at Thinkful, I think of the good gig economy. The gig economy has this sort of negative connotation right now around part-time work to fill the time because unemployment isn't good enough, and that's your Uber driver. But there's also a good gig economy that empowers the future of work, that allows people with ambition to own their career in a way that they can't otherwise. It ends gatekeepers like the system that I benefited from controlling others' destiny. It removes their authority and says, look, you're going to do it on merit, you're going to do it on ambition. And then it also believes that learning is good. Learning is just good. Learning things is fun. The most popular videos on YouTube are education videos. It's incredible. Kids watch that stuff for hours and hours on end. It's much better than the junk you get on cable TV. Learning is just good. It's all part of the good gig economy. And then the stats, just going back to geography for a second, the stats are very impressive. Depressing, but impressive. 41 million Americans, greater than 10% of the population, live more than 25 miles from a public college. That's more than the distance of a commute. Those two numbers are not coincidental in this deck. If you can't commute there on a daily basis, you won't do it, right? If the commute is required. So the classroom, again, if you're just outside the realm, outside the option, outside the access to that education, it's just geographically impossible. That remains still a challenge. So, quick presentation, not a huge group. It's like the pitch for Thinkful is that we're creating this networked education. We have students that are like in their 30s and 40s and 50s, and some in their 20s too. They're trying to make a career change. We're helping them get there through education, plus networking, plus career services, plus all the things you want to do. We provide, this is like straight up from our fundraising deck. I'm not fundraising, but it's like straight up from our fundraising deck. We provide technology, not real estate. We have a network of employers and industry experts around in the US, about 6 cities right now, a team all around the country. We're 60 people here in the US. On-demand, self-paced, personal education, one-on-one mentorship for every single one of our students, from industry experts that are working in their job and then doing this training and this education with students on the side, or maybe it's the reverse is true. And then we measure ourselves. There's no degrees. We hate degrees. No degrees. It's just about job outcome. Can you deliver a job for that student? And that's it. I'm Darrel. See you.